A cell phone, just film me, that you can have. Sony Ericsson is terrible. I've had multiple lawsuits with them. Okay, so about me. This time I'm not speaking alone because, well, we brought along our clerk of the coordinating office as well. She's the first Gotha-Text fan. That's the most important attribute. She loves Gotha-Text. And today we'll be having 2 talks in 1 hour. First of all, we look at the schedule, at what there will be said and so on. And then we will start by looking out at crash tracking. Basically, why should you track application crashes? How can you track them? And what can you do to minimize their impact on the application ratings? There will be Java source code available, which you can have via our Twitter, which we will give you at the end of the talk. There will be a slide big with our Twitter handle. And you can use all the code we show here for free, because first of all, under Slovak law, it is too simple to be protected. And secondarily, you have to listen to me, so that's compensation enough. To all the late bloomers. That's chocolate, it's edible. Okay.
They probably didn't visit your last presentation.
What?
They didn't visit your...
You're hungry, what? I was hungry back there. Score! Another one.
But we still have 3 minutes to go.
Can you repeat?
We still have 3 minutes to go.
Well, doesn't matter. Okay.
We're not late.
So, that's the plan. The main amount of talking today will be about crash management in Java. But in addition to that, we'll also talk about Qt. We will assess who of you knows something about Qt, and then we will use multiple presentations to basically get the point along as efficient as possible. And if you want to do us a real favor and you want to feed her, please tweet about us. Here we've got some suggestions for things which you can tweet. And for every 50 tweets about our company, she gets a bonus. So please, if you want to feed her, and that often, if you want to feed her, tweet about us. Okay. So, first of all, why track crashes? Who of you has an idea why it is helpful to track crashes of applications? Who has an idea? I want some ideas. Listen up, if you guys sleep, I will randomly pick one and he'll be shot. So I want some ideas. Why should you track some crashes?
So it doesn't happen again.
Perfect. The Android market today is very, very, very crowded. So if you launch an app in the Android market today, in the past, if you launched an app, you got at least a few hundred downloads from the new list. Today, you can launch an app and nothing happens. You get 0 downloads. So it's very important to do some PR, and it's also very important to have good ratings. And if a crash happens, the user usually gives you a bad rating. But if you get feedback and you respond to it, the customer will love you. I explain you how this works. Customers usually have ego issues. They think that they are, well, just the customer and nobody cares about them, blah, blah, blah. And if the developer walks up to somebody and tells him, hey, you here, I really like you, you look so cool, I really, really like you, and you are the best, here's some chocolate, I'll fix your bug. This guy, I'm pretty sure, is going to run to our booth, he's going to install Gotha-Text. If you address the customer's needs, the customer's ego, their inner soul gets pampered, just like with the female, if you tell her that she looks good, even though she's fat, it's exactly the same. So really, crash handling is important. And now you might say, why should you track crashes? The founder of the company who sent us here today said, isn't it better not to crash? And I told him, wouldn't it be better if I had little wings sprouting out of my ass so that I could fly? We have to look at the following. We've got an ever-increasing number of lines of code. We've got an ever-increasing number of devices. Actually, to see me mention fragmentation, should be shot for that, because fragmentation is mostly bullshit. It's been around since Palm, so that's just garbage. But there is also margin pressure. And so in the end, you have the problem which was faced with the Tupolev 144 or the Concorde. You could do it perfectly, but if you do it perfectly, it's so expensive that nobody wants it. And if you do it good enough, it's good enough. And if one plane crashes, let's be honest, it's 144 dead people. Oh, Crimea River. There is another problem. Users are very, very stupid. If we have a look at you people here, I think I have enough brains in this hall to fill an army of users. All the mobile phone users of the Netherlands, with the brain which I have collected here, we could supply them and there would be some left. And we had, in the past, this was no joke, we had customer care interactions where we asked somebody, what operating system version do you use on your handheld? It was a woman. And the woman started screaming and crying, you are insulting my handheld, you are a very bad company, my handheld is good and your program is bad. And if you ask somebody to send you a file from the file system, well, all bets are off. And finally, it's very important to keep apart crash and stat tracking. Stat tracking is something that's very, very, very useful to have because it allows you to analyze the flows through the application. You can see where do the users enter my application, how do they use the application, which operating flows are common and have to be optimized. But this is not the question of crash tracking. In crash tracking, we focus on only two interrelated problems. First of all, where do applications crash? And secondarily, where do users die? What do we mean by users die? Who of you has an idea?
They go dead.
What?
They die.
But
Stop
where?
using the app.
Not necessarily, but
An
it's a good
install.
idea. Think about games.
Which crash will cause a user to uninstall the application?
It's also correct, but it's not what I want to go. Think about games. Let's assume that I create a beautiful game. Let's think free Red Bull drinking. And there is an enemy who is, let's call him the Surgeon General, the health minister. And the health minister obviously frowns upon drinking Red Bull. And if the health minister is too strong and the players always get killed by him, then they will eventually be frustrated. So it might make sense to use crash tracking to also track points of pain for users. For example, if there is a wizard and you have to enter the credit card, and you've got all the girls entering the credit cards with dashes, because on the Tatrabanker form it says there is a dash in the credit card number, and then the application shows a wizard, you cannot enter it that way, then she will stop using the app. And so collecting this and user deaths is also very helpful. And finally, another advice from psychology. Who of you has ever been on a date? Who hasn't been on a date?
That's a better question, yes.
The first 2 minutes of every interaction are critical. There is a German airline. I'm not mentioning the name because I don't want them to sue. Their first-class product is terrible. It is absolutely annoyingly terrible. We flew it once because of a customer of ours who insists us flying with them. It is absolutely terrible. The bed is fucked, the food is fucked, the staff is unfriendly. But why does everybody like them? Because when you board the plane and you sit down, you have a bouquet of flowers sitting on the seat. And the first 2 minutes are critical. The first 2 minutes of every interaction decide. And if the setup wizard rejects the credit card because there are dashes in the credit card number, then your application will be very, very unpopular. And the first thing which we're going to look at are private debuggers. And for this, I would suggest give a warm applause to our coordinating officer, Annette Bosbach.
Now let's talk about private debuggers. What are private debuggers? Private debuggers are a special mode of operation, and they allow developer access to internals. They are on the user's phone, but they can be accessed via secret key. They must be easy to enter for the user, but difficult to guess. They prevent users from entering it by mistake, and the customer provides info to developer. And how are private debuggers to implement? They are to implement by foot, no ready-made libraries available. For example, GodetText. You open the thread. The second, you enter secret code. At third, you enter commands. And fourth, you give response. But the best of GodetText today is our free vodka included. So please try our booth after this talk. We are ready for you.
So I'd say this was the first time speaking in the Netherlands, so I ask for some applause for her, please. Next time she will talk longer. And dead serious, the private debuggers, we will show them off, and this is really, really useful. So if you come to the GodetText booth, I can demonstrate that to you. You'll love it. But with that, it's time for some more technical things. We're going to start with some basic crash handling. Essentially, in Android, there is a set default exception handler. Who of you has ever heard of this call before? This guy must have an awful lot of crashing code.
Yep.
Thank you for your honesty.
No, yeah. I look at other people's crashing code.
Oh my, you're from this testing company, or what?
AppKudo?
This is a poor guy.
Yeah.
Okay. And essentially, the really, really easiest way to do it is to just get a set default exception handler, and then to write to the file, and then you just die, and the user, when he calls you, you tell him he should email you the file. In principle, this method works really well. However, there is, in theory, I'm now talking only about theory, there is a possibility that the log file will be corrupted, because the input-output on the Android platform is buffered. So this means that if the thread terminates before the data is written, the data could be lost. However, I'm telling you this in practice, that I'm speaking about the last 2 years, we never saw this happen. So this is a perfectly workable solution, but in case you are paranoid, there are some workarounds. First of all, there is a Stack Overflow user. His name is Gupta. Is he here? Okay, this Gupta guy had a really, really, really cool idea. His idea was that he would fire an intent from the exception handler. This intent would arrive at the service, and this service would then write to the file. However, this sadly doesn't work, because when the intent has been fired and the application terminates, Android also executes the intent. So the intent never reaches the logging service and the data is lost. So we've got a workable solution, which is in the example A360 crash one, which you can download from our Twitter feed. And it completely overrides the crash handling, and it restarts the application from the crash handler. But the problem is that the usual crash message is not shown, and it's not known how the operator stores will react to this kind of behavior. But it is really easy to set up. So first of all, you see here, we save the context, we save the path to the log file, and we get the default handler. And if an actual uncaught exception happens, we just grab the code, we relaunch our own application with the data for the login. This is really, really easy code. This is only using the alarm manager to restart the own application. It's really primitive. And then we also have an error reporter service, which, when it gets called, it stores some data to the file system. And I wanted to warn you about something. In practice, the namespace Android OS build is very unreliable. Every manufacturer has a completely different set of data in there. And so when you are interacting with Android OS build, I personally, in my company, we surround every line with a try-catch statement. I know it's meticulous. Who of you thinks it's paranoid? Who of you thinks it's meticulous? So, in practice, you never know what will happen, so I always say, better be safe than sorry. And finally, this is just some testing code. You see, I create the exception trap, I set the exception trap up, and I throw an exception if the button gets clicked. Do you want to have a picture of me with the chocolate? Then photograph now.
Got it.
And then finally we declare the intent. So, this was the simple edition. By the way, if you don't like my throwing, she's even stronger, so she can take over throwing the chocolates. If anybody of you wants more accurate. Who of you has used Accra in the past? Okay, here are two Accra users. The one of them apparently got enough chocolate. Oh, 3 of them. So,
Always go for the headshot.
Accra is an open source library. The name stands for Android Crash Report for Android.
Really?
Don't know why they call it that.
I thought it was for iOS.
Yes, I also thought. I mean, no, it is like crazy speaker for crazy event or something like that. Okay, either way, it's a really, really flexible library. And this is the extra feature. It can dump the crash data to Google Docs. So you don't need to set up complex servers, blah, blah, blah. It's essentially a one-line deployment. The biggest problem, where most of the people fail and cry, is setting it up. First of all, you need a Google account. Who of you doesn't have a Google account? Well, there is one person here. She's still on Symbian, but...
No, actually, he's on Symbian as well.
Okay, then there's another Symbian user here. Stand up. Show yourself. So, either way, you use the Google spreadsheet. Google has an office suite, it's called spreadsheet. You use spreadsheet to create a new form, and you export the form to get a string called form key. And this form key, you then integrate into the app with the library. This is the whole integration for Accra. This is all you need to do. First of all, you set an attribute with the form key. Secondarily, you override the normal application with a custom application class. And when creating the application, you first call Accra init and then super on create. This is really, really, really easy. And however, this is not the only thing you can do. You can also use Accra to pass custom data. So because the default configuration which I've showed you only uses Accra, it only reports the crashes. But if you want to report some internal state data as well, you can simply call error reporter get instance to get the handle of Accra. And then you can put in some custom data into it using a hash table. So it's a string array, and you put one string, it's the column in the spreadsheet, and the second string is the data. It's really, really dead easy to use. The next problem is there are some users who are paranoid and who are afraid of ACRA, of crash reporting. And for them, you can disable ACRA using the ACRA shared preference object. ACRA provides a shared preference object where there is an attribute called ACRA enable. And if you set ACRA enable, ACRA is enabled. If you set it to false, ACRA is disabled. This can help you, for example, with the German data protection laws. Because in Germany, it's prohibited to transfer user data to a server. I mean, we're in Slovakia, so we don't give a fuck. If a German policeman shows up, I mean, we can even shoot him in the Slovak law. Usually I have to rape him to death, but that's something different. Either way, this jokes aside, the fastest and safest way to make sure that your application is hated is to disobey data protection laws. And if this happens, you have a scandal and the user stops using your app. So this is a very short bit of code. It's one checkbox and these 2 lines. But please put them into your application. Believe me, it helps. And as we already said, ACRA really it does a shitload of things. ACRA, for example, it can interact with users. So if your application crashes, ACRA can show a custom dialog. We are very sorry that your application has crashed. We want to send you some free chocolate because it is so sad that our application has crashed. Alternatively, you can also use ACRA to access some custom databases. So for example, if you have a Squirrel database running in your company, you can use ACRA to dump the crash data directly into the Squirrel database. This can be really useful, for example, if you have a bug tracker. Who of you has a bug tracker? Who doesn't have a bug tracker?
That was pretty lame.
Nächsten schmeißt du. So, better targeting. Annette, dort hinten hin. So, warte, nur die Rolle gebe. So, there is this URL. This explains what you should do. You will get the slides later. And until then, keep in mind, ACRA really, really does a lot. And one more advice, when integrating these applications, these classes to your applications, it very quickly becomes a lot of work. For example, if you want every activity to add some data to the stack, you have to find all the classes, integrate the login code. It's a huge amount of work. So what we do in the company is we have stub objects. So for example, we have our activities. We derive them from the Tamogemon activity class, which in itself is derived from the normal activity class. Who of you knows why we do this? Yes?
Because you include the logging thing into the TMGN activity.
As we already said, it is you implement it by foot. There is a lot of leeway for the developers. So you can even abstract away the actual logging. And in our company, this is the class we use. So we have a log this function, which is used for the actual logging. And we override on create. And instead of on create, the developer has to use Tamogemon on create, for example. So, who of you knows where this was shot? This is, yes?
No.
This? What? Volldampf. Volldampf. Aber volle Kraft. I told you to hit you hard. So, this is the reason why Nokia always says so stupid things about Android. This is in the Nokia headquarters. They once had a room where there was steam alcohol. And the employees could walk into the alcohol steam and could sit there and could be sauna, sauna, sauna. And this is the reason why Nokia is dead today, people. Literally, they are all always drunk. Always. And as this is something that I'm now going a bit on a limb, I'm speculating. Google Play, for an application listed in Google Play, there is crash tracking included, basic one. I personally give you people. Okay, so this is an area where I'm going on a limb now. I personally would not be surprised if Google would analyze the frequency, how often you log into the Google Play Crash Tracker for ranking your application, to measure how active you are. So in my company, we log in once a day. It hasn't done us any damage so far. And if you are unmarried and you want to burn some money, then there are also some companies like BugSense and Flurry. They provide crash tracking services for a fee. And then finally, there could also be your own service, which you could tell us about in questions and answers. So, time for some conclusions. You see, this guy here, he's also a Nokia employee, but he wasn't in the how is it called? He wasn't in that chamber. And so when Nokia started doing Windows Mobile, he ran. The only intelligent Nokia employee. So, crashes will happen. Today's mobile applications are highly complex, and there is no money to be made with them, thanks to Apple. As even the operating system can crash from time to time, Sony Ericsson crashes more often than others, of course, users tolerate a reasonable frequency of crashes. If an app crashes once a week, and it doesn't happen in the first 2 minutes, there's no problem. Workarounds, however, are needed. Let's assume that some user pays $20 for, you pay $20 for your application. If I don't update it frequently, will you be angry? Who would be angry if I don't update his expensive application frequently? She's verteidigen. So, the problem when you do the updates is that nobody really knows after some time what to do. And so you can either hire an assistant and have a think about features all day, or it's much cheaper to let the users generate their wishes themselves. If there is a crash happening, if there is some oddity, if there is a flow which is often terminated, you can fix that. And as we already said, monitoring is the first step to any kind of improvement. If you have a problem, whether it's alcohol problem, whether it's too small breasts, or whether you are too fat, the first and most important thing is to accept for yourself, I have a problem. And monitoring crashes is the first step to admitting that you have problems. And as we already said, the Olympic spirit is important. The most important thing is that you track the crashes. The second most important thing is that you act on this data. Who of you knows PDCA? Okay, PDCA is the Deming cycle. It's a quality assurance cycle, which is made up of plan, do, check, act. So essentially, you plan to collect crash data, you collect the crash data, you analyze it, and you improve your application. And then you start to plan again how to collect more crash data. It is not so important how to track them, and it's really not important whether you track 100% or 99.5% of the crashes. It's the Olympic spirit. You know, it's much like we have in Bratislava, in the city. We have in the inner city where we are living, there is a marathon once a year to run around the marathon. She can do it in like 2 minutes. It takes me 15 minutes the last time I tried. But I try and I always get into the goal area. It's the Olympic spirit that counts. And with that, we're done with the first part. Who of you has questions or feedback? Yes?
You talked about fragmentation.
Yes.
Why do you think fragmentation is bullshit?
I tell you why. I'm in this industry since 2002. 2002, there was Palm and there was Windows Mobile. And we had 50 different Palm devices in our office because every one of them was different. If the platform wants to have a large reach, it needs to offer a variety of devices. Let me give you an example. I need some victims. Who wants to come on stage? This guy, put for. Beide. Who wants to come to stage? You? Okay. Annette in die Mitte. Alle vier in die Mitte stellen. We've got, ihr zwei auch noch, den Zweig seid drauf, move it. These guys are cowards. Move it, both of you. We've got the slaves, we've got the daring, and we've got the cowards. We've got 4 different people. They look different. They look different. They behave different. They have different faces. They have different hand sizes. How can you give all 4 of them the same device?
Apple can do.
Can you repeat?
Apple can do.
Yes, and that's the reason why Apple's market share is 20%.
I know.
If Apple is showing how not to do it. Basically, Apple has made a conscious decision. We want the money of the idiots, the money of the wives, and the money of the people with a black credit card who need something else to show off. Apple is not a role model for a large reach platform. And so it bent. Thank you, you can, all 3 of you. So it is always a trade-off. For every developer, you have to decide, do I want a large reach? If you want the large reach, you have to live with the consequences. It's like if you eat such a huge pile of steak, and then your wife tells you, you got fat. And then you're like, oh no! You have to live with the conscious decisions which you make. Have I answered the question sufficiently?
Yeah.
Any other questions? No other questions?
Will you put up the slides on the internet?
On Twitter, you have to follow us on Twitter. Today in the evening we will put them up.
Okay, super.
I have another question.
Yes, of course.
Not about fragmentation. But that was a really good suggestion about relaunching the app and hiding the dialog box, because I feel like there probably is a percentage of the user base that, like, if you do something that crashes and they don't actually see the crash message and it relaunches the application, they could not even, like, I feel like that's much more pleasant for a user than...
I fully agree with this, but the problem is legal. There are a lot of nice things to do which the platform vendor doesn't allow you to do. So you have to check with Google, you have to check especially with the carriers. The carriers, they can go anal over this. So, yes, any other questions? Who of you has ever used Qt before? Given that nobody has used Qt before, I will start with my classic basic slides on Qt development. Who of you has ever used Qt before? Who of you developed in, yes?
As a user, yes.
Who of you developed in C++? Alle versorgen. Who of you develops in C++? Okay. Who of you does cross-platform development? With which system?
Mac OS 10. I use OS 10.
Yes, and for what cross-platform framework?
I literally use Emacs and GCC for cross-platform.
I was talking about the cross-platform framework. Okay. Qt is a cross-platform framework. You see here we have an application. The application uses the Qt API. Nokia, or rather now Nokia, ports the Qt across the different platforms. And so you can easily recompile your application to run on different operating systems. And as we already said, there is this recompilation going on. And you see here that the Qt is dependent completely on different Windows systems. This, however, creates a problem when porting. And so somebody intelligent, he was a Nokia employee, let's not say this loud, somebody intelligent came up with the idea of Lighthouse. Lighthouse is a window manager which renders controls into a bitmap. And so Qt is dependent only on Lighthouse. And Lighthouse only needs a wedge. It's a very small 200 lines of code which basically pushes the bitmap onto the screen of the operating system and collects the input from the touch screen. Is this clear to everybody how it works? And when you're using Qt to create an app, the end result is a native application. So you see here, in the first step, you run an application called QMake. QMake creates make files. And these make files are then compiled by the native make utility of your operating system. So essentially, if you use Qt, the applications which come out at the end are indistinguishable from native applications. And something else which is very important with Qt is the licensing. There are two licensing options for Qt, commercial and LGPL. And I personally, even in consulting, even in very sensitive areas, think politics and arms, I still recommend to use the LGPL library for one reason. Qt is updated very frequently. If you push your changes back to the Qt team, and the Qt team doesn't update, it's their responsibility to keep your patch working. But if your patch is on your own, and they update, then you have to get merging. And once you don't have one patch or two patches, but 50 patches, I wish you really, really good fun. Every week you'll be merging. We've got 25 minutes, so I will teach you about Qt in 15 minutes, if you want. The most important thing in Qt is the signal and the slot. Not the slut, the slot. They are used for event processing, and they become C++ at compile time via a tool called mock. And as I already said, there are signals and there are slots. The signal is emitted to say that something has happened. For example, if, let's assume I have an object and the user clicks it, then the object emits the signal, I was clicked. And there is a slot, and the slot receives the signal. And on runtime, a connection between signal and slot is established. So essentially, when you start the app connects all the objects together. And it is very, very important because there are some rules which you have to observe. And these rules are checked only at runtime. So when the application is compiling, it doesn't mean that all the signal and slot connections are valid. As we already said, Qt is made up of C++. In addition to that, there also are some mock files. These mock files contain the glue which actually realizes the signal slot in the background. And I give you a good advice. If you have a CVS or something like that, under no circumstances should you upload these mock files to the CVS, because they change every time you compile your app. And the CVS, it goes down. We have in our company a really powerful CVS. It is a 600 megahertz processor. It's 15 years old, the server. And we never had problems with it until somebody started uploading mock files to the CVS. Well, actually, it was me. I was drunk that day, and I was like, commit, and the next day, okay. In addition to that, there also are the UI files. A UI file contains XML. We call it resource HTML in the company, but essentially it contains an XML which defines a what you see is what you get user interface for Qt. Then there is a .profile, which defines the project. There are the header file, and finally there is a QML file. We will talk about QML in a minute. QML essentially is JavaScript for creating user interfaces. And one more thing is very important about QML and about Qt also, the layout system. A layout, it essentially, we have here some controls. We have a slider, a label, and 2 spaces. What does a spacer do? I can demonstrate. I need 2 males. 2 males, please. 2 males. 2 victims, you two.
No, we don't.
Du stößt ihn doch mit aufeinander, you're both ugly. Also one more victim. One more victim. You're a victim.
Yeah, sure.
So. Einfach gleich auseinanderstoßen. And this is our spacer. And we've got 2 controls, and we'll arrange them.
Okay.
And now, this is design time, and now run time. Exactly. A spacer will always expand itself as far as it can, pushing the controls against boundaries. So if you have a form boundary and you have a control, the spacer will push the control to the boundary. And if you have spacers on both sides, the effect is the control will be levitating in the middle. And as you saw, when our spacer got angry and pushed the victims away, normally a spacer just pushes around. But if you have a layout, the layout defines the direction. It's like a rail. Who of you travels by rail? If you have a little rail and you push an object on a rail, it only drives on the rail. And so you see here the layouts, they define in which direction the spacer will push. And finally, you need to add a form layout to the form to activate the form for layout management in Qt. Forgetting to add a form layout leads to a non-working form. It's the most common bug for beginners. Gib mir beide Schubladen und pass auf. Yes. And I wanted to show you also how to implement a slot. A slot is defined like a normal member function, but with an additional qualifier, slots. And then you simply create a normal member function and you connect it. As you see here, you can connect it in code, or you can connect it using the visual system. And with that, on the next slide. Who of you doesn't know about Android? Who wants Android explained in 5 minutes? This guy doesn't know about Android. Stand up. Applause for him. Admit it, you came here only for the females. You
Yeah, and for the chocolate.
Yes. Okay. Qt for Android is a community-driven port. So essentially it was started by the community in the year 2011. There was a Romanian fellow, his name was Bogdan Vatra, and he said, this is WOC. I want Qt for Android. And he started porting it basically on his own. And Nokia basically gave him this. And Digia, the current owner of Qt, they at least mention him in press releases. We really like Mr. Vatra. Mr. Vatra is a beautiful man, and so on. And the actual server infrastructure is provided by KDE. The relationship between KDE and Qt is relatively complex. We'll explain it later on at the booth in detail. We have a little comic about the intelligence at Nokia. Who of you saw this comic already at one of my shows? Okay. Essentially, this comic shows the relationship between the Asian manufacturers, the people at Nokia's. You see the brain is fleeing. Literally, if you see a Nokia employee, I always tell her, if she does a shooting practice in Slovakia, never ever should she shoot a Nokia employee in the head, because the head will implode. There will be a vacuum explosion. We're going to be torn apart. There will be a vacuum. That's so intelligent. But either way, essentially we see Microsoft can push the Asian manufacturers only via the prices for the operating system. But on the other hand, the Asian manufacturers, they've got the fork right into the ass of the Nokia people because they can do cross-subsidized dumping. Who of you has LG devices? We were originally planning to get an LG TV for the new office. And the LG saleswoman started babbling to us, you want the TV? Why don't you also want the phone? The phone will interact with the TV. And oh, you've got an old workstation from Beluga. Why don't you get a new LG workstation as well? For LG and for Samsung, it doesn't matter. If they make losses on the phone, they make it up by selling you a notebook. So they can cross-subsidize. But the idiots at Nokia, they only do phones, so they can't do that. The next problem is that the Asian manufacturers control the manufacturing. Nokia doesn't have any manufacturing anymore. So if the Asians become angry, they say, when Nokia comes to the next manufacturing order. And of course, they can also attack Microsoft. They can't attack them in Europe, but they definitely can attack them in the Asian regions. Imagine the impact of, for example, Samsung, which basically is the Korean government, starting to advocate Linux. How long do you think it would take until when Samsung says Linux is good desktop operating system, Microsoft is evil American oppressor who has come to damage Korean culture? How long do you think it will take until there will be 2 Windows computers left in Korea? I want some guesses.
A year?
Probably correct. This we had already? So, who of you knows where this picture was made? Where?
I think Vienna.
No mobile webcams.
No.
We're out of chocolate, so you can now start asking questions. She can't throw any more objects at you.
Well, she can throw laptops.
What? No, we're out of them already. This time, usually we have more, but this time it's out already.
Wrapper.
What?
Throw the entire box.
She wants to throw the entire box, but this would become painful. So, if you want to do some development using Qt, I personally suggest you use Linux, but you can also use macOS or Windows. But it's best to simply use Ubuntu 10.4. You have to install ARM, you install the OpenGDK, and then you're essentially good to go, because there is an installer, you download it, and with one click, it automatically sets up the SDKs for you, it sets up the Qt development tools, it essentially sets up everything for you in one step. And when it is set up, you just have to start the IDE. This is the sequence under Unix, and it's very important, you must run the super user. The internal architecture of Qt for Android is a bit complex, because Qt is updated very frequently, but the downward compatibility is relatively good. And because Qt is large, and the memory on the handset is limited, an idea was hatched to use a system which is called Ministro. Ministro is an application which analyzes a Qt application which is to be run, and if it detects that libraries are missing, it automatically downloads the libraries before executing the application. This is actually like the smart installer used in Symbian.
Won't that mean that in the first 2 minutes user is looking at a...
Yes, basically it would mean that, sadly. And this is the internal architecture of Qt for Android. The application contains essentially a loader and a bridge. And these two components are made in Java. And they bring up the C++ code which makes up the actual Qt application. And just to give you a bit of a look at the user interface, this is a very new feature which we are pretty proud to have it at the Qt for Android team. We've got a GUI sniffing system. This means because every manufacturer has its own user interface. We analyze at runtime how your phone renders the controls, and then we use this analysis to recreate the ugly buttons from Sony Ericsson, for example. If you would run this on a Samsung phone, it would look much, 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 much better. Sadly, it doesn't work completely yet. For example, you see message boxes, they still show up in the very top corner of the screen. There are still some small problems, which we haven't addressed yet. But we finally managed to address input. So whatever input solution the user uses, he can use his on-screen keyboard interacting with the cute widgets. And one more important warning, there are no soft keys. Who of you has developed for Symbian in the past? Symbian essentially uses soft keys at the bottom of the screen. These are not there in Qt, so you have to modify your application structure to make them work under Android. And there are some project-specific settings which you can set them up inside Qt, but given that this is an Android conference, I don't really see much reason going over them. When porting from other operating systems, there are some gotchas. For example, in Symbian, it is usual to fully qualify the definition of members. GCC doesn't accept this, so you have to remove these qualifications before the app will compile for Android. But the new Symbian compiler doesn't need them anymore. So this is only a problem for real legacy companies which just got like 5-year-old code like we. This is a relatively annoying problem. In the Qt for Android, all the include paths are based on the location of the .pro file. So if your code is in a subfolder, you don't have to go out of the subfolder anymore, because the include is always set against the place where the .pro file is living. The next classic problem is, this is a nuisance. Is the Q tall or is it small? Under Symbian it doesn't matter. The compiler, the GCC, is case sensitive. So if you have got some sloppy writing of the includes, this also should be fixed. And then there are the normal GCC gotchas. You know, you have to put the curly brackets around the cases and so on. So with that, we're essentially done with the Android part. Who of you is interested theoretically in porting his applications to some other platforms using Qt as well? Nobody. Okay. Then I'm going to thank you all. It was a great pleasure to have you here today. Who of you has got questions? Who of you has questions? Okay, then I thank you all very much. Come to our booth to test DataText, to pick up your free alcohol, and it was a great pleasure. Thank you all for being here.